This is the GGJ podcast, a show about the games industry, the people who make them, and the communities that grow up around them. I'm Susan Gold, a game education trailblazer and one of the founders of the Global Game Jam. Each week, we will be sitting down with a new guest, highlighting their own path and journey. This is a space for honest conversation from makers about creativity, collaboration, failure, and the messy, the beautiful reality of making games. So whether you're a young dev or seasoned, an educator, a student, or someone who just loves games and the people behind them, welcome to the GGJ podcast. Take a breath, settle in, and let's hear directly from the makers themselves.
This episode is made possible in partnership with the Global Game Jam, the world's largest game creation event, bringing together creators from around the globe. A big thank you as well to the Global Game Jam's headline sponsors, Epic Games, Games for Change, and Xsola, for helping make this creative community a reality. To learn more and to get involved in the upcoming jams, visit globalgamejam.org. This episode is brought to you in part through the support of the University of Miami School of Communication and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation.
Today's guest is Lual Mayen. He was born on the run from the civil war in South Sudan and grew up in refugee camps with no reliable electricity, no access to formal technical education, and very few obvious pathways out. Yet, from that environment, he taught himself to code and turned his fascination with games into a purpose-driven career. Lual is now a game developer, entrepreneur, and a humanitarian whose work centers on using interactive experiences to build empathy and support for refugees and communities affected by conflict. His best-known project, the game Salaam, puts players in the shoes of someone fleeing war, and then conflicts in game choices to real-world support for people living in refugee camps. Through his company and his foundation, he's focused on giving young people in displaced communities access to digital skills, creative tools, and the belief that they can be more than their circumstances. What inspires me most about Lual is his story is not just about escaping a hard beginning, but it's about redefining what's possible when talent, drive, and resilience are given even the smallest chance to grow. I'm so thrilled to welcome to the show my friend who did his first global game jam in a refugee camp, now to his life on a humanitarian stage. Everyone, please welcome Lual.
Thank you so much. What an amazing introduction. I never thought I would have an introduction like this, but that's what life is about. I always say that talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And I want to make sure that I wasn't here because of just myself today, but because of people like you, who believe and who understand. And that's why I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. And it's not just like a conversation for today. We go way back. Since 2015, it's been a while. These are things that make me so happy to dive back and discuss things that happen over the journey. That's why it's a journey. So I'm really excited. Yeah.
I got to know you very early in your career, as you said, but at the same time, you had this audacity that people have that just gives them that I can do this. And, when people say, oh, everyone describes you as refugee turned game developer turned humanitarian, what part of that feels most true to you? What feels incomplete?
That's a good question. And if I didn't have the experience of being a refugee, I don't think that I would become a game developer, because that experience forced me to understand how can I turn that experience into a story, right? So I didn't know games before. I didn't know how to design games. I didn't know a lot of things. But when I played games and understood the power of games, and I was like, oh wow, games are so powerful in a way that if I connect them to my experience as a refugee, it can help other people to understand the flight of refugees, right? So at that moment is the moment where I felt like, wow, okay, what can I do? Then the first thing you have to do is you have to learn how to make games. Or then how do you learn how to make games? You have to go to school and teach yourself how to make games. So from there, I'm like, okay, let me create them. And then create them for what purpose? The purpose of telling the stories. Like refugees that do not just wake up in the morning and leave their home. It's a choice of between life and death. When you look at these refugee families, they have countries. Some have families, they have something they love so much than anything, right? So it wasn't just them waking up in the morning and leaving what they love. It was a choice of like, wow, let me either survive or let me just go through the journey of trying to see another day. And that another day, leave where I'm in danger. And there's so many ways people become refugees. First, you can climate change. Second to that is war. For my family, it was a war between Sudan a long time ago. There was still a lot of people, including my own family, right? Some of my sisters. So I think that that journey made them find a new way. And then it took actually my family to walk 250 miles to find a place of refuge. And that was in Uganda. And that's where I was born as my family was fleeing the war in South Sudan.
So your mom had you in the refugee camp in Uganda?
My mom had me in like a border between South Sudan and Uganda. So people wake up in the morning and go do their daily things and so on. I have my three sisters. And during that time, I wasn't born. My mom was still pregnant. And then the war started in the morning. And they just like, grab things and just run away without knowing where to go. Thousands of people. And then in that journey of her carrying my sisters, two of them didn't end up making it because of the war. They didn't have food on the way, they didn't have water, and they were sick, and there were no medicine. And then in that journey, my dad was not there because he was fleeing in a different route, trying to find a way of refuge by himself. So when my family reached to the border between Uganda and South Sudan, I was born. My mom usually told me that she didn't know I was going to survive because I had no food to eat as a child. I had nothing. And I remember she was telling me she planned to throw me away because she didn't want me to suffer. And she was not the only woman that does it. A lot of women did that. And it was very like, I don't even know how to describe it because I was just a child, like maybe 1 month or something like that. But to her, it was really a journey of life and death. Yeah. And then I found a place of refuge, which was Uganda, and that became my home.
Can you take us back to one of your earliest memories of life in the camp? What did normal look like for you as a kid?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite questions to answer all the time. Because, as a child, sometimes our memories, no matter how they felt bad, no matter how difficulty we have, it always results that we had a good time. And I want to paint this very well in a way that when people think about refugees and they are being resettled, they don't resettle them like, for example, fleeing the country, South Sudan, and then the UN find you and then bring you to the US. That's different, right? That for us, during our time, fleeing the war, everything is crazy. It was like the end of the world where you are running for your life. And then even in Uganda, the government, they did not just give us a place to live, right? It's thousands of people, and where are you going to put them? You're going to put them at a place that has not been settled before. So it's like a butch, it's like a local somewhere. I don't even know how to describe it. So what you have to do as refugees is you clear the land, put some, tents, build your own houses. And even in that process, there's mosquitoes, I'm told about snake, there's told by wild animal. There's a lot of things that you have to deal with, right? And all you want as a refugee at that moment is the second chance in life. And then from us, I remember when I was 10 years old, I was helping my mom to build a house. I was helping my mom to plant crops so that's the only thing we can eat. Now, the only food we get is either from the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, and it wasn't enough. There no hospital. It was like it's nothing. So,
I can't
but
even
yeah,
imagine. You're describing something that is so foreign. I have been to a lot of what people consider second and third world countries in my life, but this is something completely different. And to be young and a little boy with an imagination and curiosity, it's so hard to even fathom what normal would have been like. But I'm sure the one thing I know from you is that it was full of love. And that is apparent in everything that you've done. So
yeah, it was in terms of even going back to our normal, even when we were doing that, right? We were kids, we want to have fun. And one of the things that we loved, it was like the beauty of culture was there. we were coming from a community of people who understand how to live together, grow together, right? And that kept us together. And we always loved to explore. As kids, we wake up in the morning and the only thing we want to do, we want to go and play soccer. So that's one thing we love so much. We're happy, if there's food, we go to somebody's house, we eat. We only eat one meal in a day if it's there. Sometimes we wake up in the morning at 7 a.m. and go to the bush so that we can go and look for mangoes or like different trees. But we were doing that with happiness because we didn't know any other world that exists apart from that. Right. Even sometimes when people see my picture when I was in refugee camp, I'm happy because there was nothing else. And that kind of like that community, that living of content that you actually survived, that was enough for us to live a new day. Yeah.
When did you get introduced to technology? How did you hear about computers?
Yeah.
That wasn't something that was a part of everyday life.
Yeah, like, one thing I used to love anything that is electronic, right? Anything I see new, no matter what happened, I want to try it, I want to see it. And I remember I got introduced to TVs first, because we watched soccer, like those small radios and things like that. And we would listen to things, and one of the things we used to listen all the time is soccer. And then from there, I actually got into trying to repair radios without no knowledge. Like if somebody like has a radio and it doesn't work, I'll go and get it and then try to fix it, and I'll fix it. And I remember there was a time whereby I can even make lights. I would put light to our home, and everybody would come and say, "Hey, how did you even put a lights here using batteries?" I remember I would make like box out of cartoons, and then I would create characters using boxes, and I'll put them together, and people will come and actually watch like a movie. It was crazy like that. That was I was young, and then like 50 people coming to my house at 9 p.m. to watch something that I created. So that kind of gave me a lot of, oh, this guy is very like,
How old are
is
you?
great. Yeah.
How old are you then?
Then I was like maybe five, like I was 5 to 10. And then I think that gave my mom understanding of, yeah, maybe you can create things. And then one day, that was recently actually, maybe 2000, was it 30? Around that area, I don't remember exactly. But then the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, they were collecting new data and all those things. And then from that time, they were using computers. And then we were in the line, and I saw they were using laptop. And then I asked my mom, I was like, "What is that?" And then my mother was like, that's a computer." And then I kept quiet. I didn't say anything. But a couple of years later on, maybe 2 years, I was like, "Hey, mom, I want to buy a laptop." And I was like, "What? Where would she get the money? There's no money." And because she knew, like, again, that's why I was telling the story of like maybe during the time I was creating things, she understand if I want something, she might, sacrifice for it. And then she worked for 3 years looking for $300 to buy for me my first computer. And that moment like changed so much to me.
How did that sacrifice shape your sense of what responsibility was then now that you had this laptop, and how did that fuel your drive?
It was a lot. That responsibility felt really very hard on myself because I remember when I got the laptop, there was a lot of trust that was involved in it. In terms of number one, how can I use the computer, right? Number two is who's going to teach me. Number three, where will I get the power to charge it? Number four, a lot of things that were going on. To the extent I even questioned myself. And the good thing is she kept it secretly saving for the money, right? So if she had brought it to me and or talk about it, "Hey, I'm going to buy a computer," I would say no. But that moment when she brought me the laptop, I was like, wow. And then second to that is when I talk about community before, I have two younger brothers. And that moment I thought, wow, how about if my younger brothers one day ask my mom and say, "I need something special," and I did not use the laptop? That means that she's not going to buy it. And I would say, "Hey, look at Lual, I bought him a laptop." Those are things I was thinking about. Then I was like, nah, yes, I want to leave. I want to make sure that I utilize this. And that's when I started working 3 hours per day to go and charge my laptop. That's why I started making sure I utilize it, even if I didn't know anything what to do with it. So I think that really taught me a lot about investing in people when you understand them is the most important thing. And one thing I think about that responsibility is my mom, she was the first person to invest in me, right? And that investment wasn't coming from like, someone from very rich family or someone from biggest country like us. That investment come from within. Somebody who understand my struggle, who also sacrifice whatever she want to do to make sure that I can be able to use that during that time. So there were too many ways of responsibilities, and that kind of instilled everything in me to understand, like, co-creating with people that you live with is the most important thing. I want to find a way of, like, how do I invest in families so that those families can invest in their children, like what my mom did, right? Like those things kind of become personal to people, right? And with those things comes, it's not just a big organization trying to invest in something, but it's about understanding more to actually invest in. And I think that responsibility is really very important. Even when I look at people who already invested in me, we'll talk about that later on to come to America. So it's a continuation of what has been started, right? That responsibility is big for me.
So there you are,
Mm.
computer in hand.
Mm.
What turned you on to video games? What was that moment and how
Yeah,
was
yeah.
it for you?
So it's one of my favorite moments of all time because in a refugee camp we didn't have internet. We had internet cafes. Like one internet cafe could be like 5 computers by somebody, and then people will come and buy a ticket for like 30 minutes. And so I would go that all the time to go and buy 30 minutes to download something. And then I remember a friend of mine who was running the place installed for me Grand Theft Auto in my computer without knowing, because we use flight drive all the time. So we'll go to internet cafe, download movies, we'll download a song and then just put it on the flight drive. So one day I came back home and then I opened my laptop. The first thing I'm seeing is a Grand Theft Auto icon. Then I'm like, what is this? And then I open it. Wow. I'm like, wow. Even that moment, I never thought actually video game are created by people. Like, like, oh, they just fall from heaven or something. My reaction was, yeah, my reaction was just insane. And then I started playing Grand Theft Auto all the time. And yeah, that's a moment whereby I was like, wow, I come from a country where 75% of the population is under the age of 30. They were born in war, they were raised up in war. So everything for them is war. Even a refugee camp, everything is violent. They have no idea of how to solve conflict, right? And when I was playing Grand Theft Auto, I had this thing in mind. And there's a moment where, okay, yeah, if these kids are continuing to play this game, they may think that's how things are done all the time. So then I was like, how about if I can make a game about peace and conflict resolution? That is where that moment come from. And then I started, okay, what can I do now to create that game?
That's beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that story. So, can you describe a specific night where everything was stacked against you? You didn't have power. Maybe there was some sort of danger, there was exhaustion, and yet you still chose to work on code and design and you powered through.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's there was a lot of time. Number one is growing up in the refugee camp. I was teaching myself how to code, right? And that part alone, I run into problem solving and nobody's there to help me solve it. And then I'll just like throw down my computer and then leave it for a couple of days. And then I'll come back next time to try to fix it. And then I will fix it. And those moments felt like I didn't have anybody to help me with that programming side. Number two, it's not even just learning programming. I had to learn design too because I had nobody to design for me, even the game characters. So I had to like learn all those things. And then after I did design, and this is after I designed the first game, I actually made it. It was less than 12 megapixel, very small game, very, very light. And the reason is because the refugee camp, I didn't have access to Google Play, Google Store, like you had to upload the game so that kids can play it. So what I will do is I will send the APK itself to kids in the refugee camp using Bluetooth. you know. So yeah, because it was so light because it's APK, so you just download it, they just receive it and open it and then play it instantly. So I would do that all the time.
So, did other kids want to learn as you were learning? Did you become the man that then taught everybody else how to code?
During the global game jam, there was first of all before the global game jam, I was like, what can I do for more people to know my game? So I uploaded APK on my Facebook page. Then I was like, hey, I made a game in a refugee camp. And then everybody like start sharing it. And then in the morning, I started receiving email from like Fox 8, San Francisco. And then because I didn't know anything about the game industry, and then I got invited to South Africa. I said, hey, come and talk about how you made your game. And from there, I began to understand, oh, there's a global game jam. And I was like, wow, there's a community of the ball class helping each other. And then I'm hosting a global game jam in South Sudan in the refugee camp. And from there, I put together kids that are now ready to learn. During the global game jam, I told them, we can even design a board game. It doesn't matter. As I just, I want us to work on something together and how we can solve problem using games. So it was really incredible. But going back to like those difficulties, most of the difficulties were technical. There's no problem. I have to like go back and learn and give myself time and rest and let it go for a couple of weeks. But there was nobody there to help me, There was no even internet to even like connect with different developers so that they can help me fix things. So those things I could deal with. And then there was a moment whereby I remember I was invited to GDC, and I was so happy. I was so proud of myself. Like, wow, I created something and finally I'm going to America because look at this, right? So we have a lot of things called resettlement for refugees, going to Australia, going to Canada, different countries. My my family has twice 7 times, right? Now 7 times in almost 15 years, and they have been rejected, for nothing. And then from there, when I got invited to the U.S. because of the work that I'm doing, I'm not going there for a settlement. I was so happy, and then at least the work that I've done in the refugee camp was incredible, right? And I remember I woke up in the morning. Was it January? I was January, actually, January around that time, and I got invited to go to GDC, and then I applied for visa, and then the next thing there was a refugee travel ban, and I couldn't make it. And I remember coming back home. This is the most beautiful part of it. I came back home. I was crying. I threw down my computer. I was like, listen, I worked so hard. I'm doing everything I can, but again, nothing is working out, right? And I remember my mother came to me and she was like, Lual, why are you crying? And then I told her the reason. And and she looked at me and she was like, Lual, let me tell you something. Did you know that you cannot steal water from an ocean? If you take a whole basket and go to the ocean and withdraw water from it, it doesn't stop. It keep overflowing. And and that's who you are as you are. More opportunities are coming. Pick up your laptop and keep working. And yeah, I remember picking up my laptop, and it did take me like 2 months to come here because of that moment of not giving up and just doing stuff. I'm here now, and my family's in Canada now. And
I
yeah,
am very grateful that they are settled and they are not in refugee camps anymore. But when you think back, and Salaam started to get attention, how did you handle the pressure of being like the representative for refugees all of a sudden? Like I jokingly said poster child, but
yeah.
I, what is it like to be the poster child? That is crazy that when people think refugees, that your face is what comes to mind.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite thing about that is I do a lot of work right now representing, and I do it in my own voice in terms of knowing that refugees can become whatever they want to be, right? They just have that second chance of life, which everybody deserves. And for them, is their chances like it's starting a new home. It's not about doing anything. And I think to me, I feel like representing them, even it's not even just about presentation, it's just is who I am. Like when I made the first statement of I wouldn't become a game developer if I wasn't a refugee. And I think it's our responsibility to create a sustainable future for those who will come after us. And for them to see that, I have friends that are doing amazing stuff right now that they were in a refugee camp before. And that's why I was telling you before, Thailand is evenly distributed, but opportunities not. The refugee camp are better than when I was there. There's internet now. There's infrastructure is changing because the refugees developing by themselves. They are creating their own space. So I think to me, even in a perspective of like, one of the things why I love using video games as a part of telling stories is to create empathy too. I really believe in a world where empathy is not taught. Empathy is built over time. And with the built over time is how we feel about things. For example, I just spoke about the story of how I didn't make it to America because of the refugee travel ban. But some people that are in government or in position where they're making policies, they don't know exactly, they never been where these people are. But if I develop a game, it's not just a today idea, it's about the future. The kids that are playing my game today or reading about my game today, in the next 20 years, they're going to be in a position of power. And because maybe they understood what refugees go through, it might actually give them the better understanding of and making better policies, right? So there's so many things that, as our experience as refugees or like developers is also creating how we feel about things. And I think that's why, it makes me happy to create what I'm creating. There are things that I never thought that I would do with the game. For example, like when I made Salaam, I never thought that it was going to be adopted by Discovery Education as a curriculum in the US up to K-12. One of the biggest things that I've done. I never thought about that in a refugee camp, and it's going on right now. So, those small things are not just for today. They're just for the future. They are just for like maybe some people that understand.
When I think about your story, I think about how you had no mentors. And I start to think about the people that are in these camps now and your work that you're doing. How did that absence teach you to be the kind of mentor that you are now? And maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the mentoring and things that you are doing.
Yeah, that's really like one of the things that I learned over the years. I've been in the US now. I can't believe it's about to be 9 years. It's an amazing learning journey in a way, but like so my mindset when I was in a refugee camp to come in America, it's changed a lot. Like it's even like there's some people that come into this country, but they don't have the right mentorship. So sometimes it becomes really very difficult for us to even continue to grow. And to me, I was really so lucky that the game industry were able to accept me as a person and what I was building. That's something that a lot of people do not have that access, and it's something that I am really so lucky to have. And in a way, even starting my own business itself, right? It's not being an independent developer, it's not a sustainable business sometimes, especially just making a game for, like, again, social impact. And that's why I'm going to talk back about what game jumps are really very important. The game jump that I did, the one I did in South Sudan, in Uganda with the refugee camp, even the game jam that I continue to do here in the US, they helped me when I first moved here. Everybody, all the game community, all the game developers in the game jam, each of them invited me to their meetup. It could have been like in Austin, in Seattle, in San Francisco. And they even launched their GoFundMe and say, hey, Lual Mayen is going to visit us in Austin. And I went to Austin and I visited them. And what does that mean to me? I connected with developers. I learned from people that were beginning like me. It's funny, there was a night I was in Austin with Global Game Jam team, and we were at the bar. And at the bar, I end up meeting someone called a Pendleton. Pendleton is a creator of an Adventure Time. And and he came to like one of the meetup for Game Jam Fox. And when I met him, and then he started talking to me. And then I remember during that time, he was like, he gave me a napkin and give me a white napkin. And we started drawing characters at a bar. And then he was like, I'm ready to join you on a game jam tomorrow. Let's do our own game jam together. Those moments helped me a lot to understand the power of networking, and how do we network? Because there's a way of networking with people that can give you knowledge, and there are people in the way where people that can help you solve problems in terms of like even coding, or even people that can help you understand the future of games, right? So I start learning all those things about life from a community of developers. And I think those things I wish we can have them more in the refugee camp. I want to create more that system. I know even in the US right now, we are in a space whereby the hiring is crazy in the game industry, and I think it's the right time for us to use the community.
So you came here and you evolved and just became more of who you already were. You've received a lot of recognition, shall we say. You became the Muhammad Ali Humanitarian of the Year award. You were recognized by Chanel. And there are a lot of other milestones. You've been invited to speak and be actually very influential. Which of those milestones do you think actually changed your day-to-day life or your impact?
That's a good question. Yeah, someone has never asked me that question, but I think to me over the years, of course, I just kept on sticking to believing what I'm doing. I think my biggest milestone in life has always been to move my family from a refugee camp to Canada. But I think all other recognitions are really very important to me in terms of like they help me open more connection to me and more conversation and more learnings. And for example, what Chanel, next price, those are things that give me another way of like, oh, I'm more than just being a video game designer, right? There's something beyond video game design. There's art. There is a new medium that is actually part of what we're doing. Actually like 3 days ago, I just received like Chanel just launched the festival magazine, and I was one of the features there. I feel like all these recognitions are helping me open up to different mentorship. For example, when I won the next Chanel, I have access to mentors, to funding. And then when I had Mohammed Ali Humanitarian Award, CNN Champion for Change, and one of the best things, I'm not going to talk about it, but I film it. I have an amazing documentary coming soon. Yeah, so things like that, I think they are not part of what I'm striving for, but they are helping me a lot to open more. How do you even call that in English? More connection or more learning to new things. So
Opportunities.
yeah, opportunities. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So one of the greatest things about games is that when you're playing with someone, you have to have trust. And until it's broken, you establish relationships. And that is what peace building really is about, is creating that relationship and finding commonalities and having fun at play. But additionally, it helps with coming up with conflict resolution and things like that. When you think of Salaam and other games of this genre, what does that necessarily look like in practice? How do we think about even making entertaining games that are also purposeful, that teach us or instill peace building as opposed to violence and hatred in the other?
Yeah, I like the way you describe it. I like the way you compare games and how people play game until the trust is broken. I really like that perspective. In a way that, of course, like when it comes back to peace building, right? And I always say true peace is built over time. And the reason why I said peace is built over time is about also conflict resolution, whereby people come together and they disagree, right? And I think the problem with the world today when it comes to conflict resolution is not that people don't have conflict resolution is skill. It's because it triggers them and they don't want to understand. They want to be right. And when you say you're right every time, you're not going to solve any conflict. Not at all. And I remember I built a board game. And the reason why I talked about a lot when it comes to board game is because of how that kind of bring people on the same table to play and to discuss things and to be able to know that I'm either losing or winning. And I think that when we design game like that, that kind of help people like, oh wow, like my response to this is going to affect the next big thing that is going to come, right? And the video game community is a community of people who love what they play. So when we people sit on the table, they agree to be in coexistence. Now, where do you give them a product that can bring them together and discuss and be able to solve that conflict? And I think that's why I feel like a conflict resolution school or like want to like invent game not as part of that moment. And I know it's very slow right now, but I'm not a big theoretical conflict resolution person, but I'm more like very practical because like I've seen conflict in real life and I've seen how to resolve it. And I think games are really very powerful tools that we can do that. Yeah.
Do you think that that will always be your future, kind of working in this more serious, intent focused games? Is that really going to be the niche you explore always?
Yeah, I think it's a niche I will always explore. I'm going to explore more storytelling in conflict resolution or like storytelling in impact, something like that. I'm going to explore that a lot. But in my future over the years, I feel like as I become business minded, right, how do I build things that, and I think like sometimes because like I know we have a lot of creative people in the game industry that can also build games for conflict resolution. But we serious like I think we always have one issue, and that is sustainability. How do and that comes from even if we build this game, are we going to get the investment that we need? If we sit in a game jam with 3 people, 4 people to create something out of the field, is there a way we can sustain it? And those are things that I maybe in the future I will start exploring. And I've seen on the recent line, the Global Game Jam have been doing amazing work with conflict resolution. I've been really excited about that. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
The Global Game Jam has really been growing and providing opportunities for people to get involved in some very interesting things. And Games for Change is one of the headline sponsors as well. Let's talk just briefly about, or as much as you want, actually, about your foundation and the training program. Tell us a little bit about it. And for you, what is success in creating these?
Yeah. When I started my foundation, the idea was, like I said before, it was more like the state of like talent in a refugee camp I grew up. They are very different right now. In a way that we have a lot of resources, and I began it during the pandemic, and I was really so lucky to like get funding for beauty technologies, which was really good. And then also I remember getting some funding from Dialogue Philanthropies, which was really good. And I'm still looking for more funding. The last couple of years, the game industry funding has been very, very limited. And I'm still like working with like Epic Game right now. They have curriculum developing. So I seen these curriculums are available for free. I'm like, okay, how do I have them? And the refugees access them for free. So that's been really good, and it's something I'm really excited about. And yeah.
So you're curating learning so that people can access them. I love that. That's brilliant. And then are you able to find talent from the camps and are you employing them?
Yes, yeah. So we started as a cohort. So it was a cohort of like 25. And we selected them from like 200 or something, but we see the level of technical skill they already have. So those cohort from one, and then there's cohort two. So sometimes there's some cohort that we use to actually teach the other first cohort because it become like a rotation. And then sometimes what we do is when they have really good design skills, then we connect them to internship program to continue. So yeah, but we want to make sure that we upscale it, and yeah.
So when you think about your own personal resilience and you think about the lack of having anybody tell you what your plan should be. You've sought connections, just by posting your game on your Facebook page. All of this has happened, right? It was just that one small act of sharing, and then it transformed into a life. So, how do you tell people, okay, I didn't have a plan and I just went for what I thought was a good goal, peace games, and here I am. What is it that you tell them to do? Make games, play games? What do you share with people? What do you say? Hey, I had no plan, but here I am.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, the act of sharing, right? And I'm not going to say it in a motivational way. I'm going to say it in a reality way as creators. I think the good thing about the game industry and the game design is this: the act of sharing is very important for us. In a way that was big risk, right? I took a risk of posting an APK, which is somebody can just download it and replicate it, and that's it. That was number one risk, right? But I took that risk because I didn't have the tools to post it to someone I can control. So I did not even think about whether there's a control and so on. It's actually funny. I in December 5th last year, I spoke at the Senate and I spoke about investing in intellectual property rights for creative industries. And when I was thinking about the whole idea of intellectual property in creative industries, I thought back about what I did first. And that was there was no property right at all. But I think that moment to me is really very important. As a creator, you have to think outside the box within that moment where this is something that I did and this is something that I want to get to the world and I'm very happy with it. And if you don't have that, then don't share, right? But if you feel like I want feedback, sometimes we fear too much about people taking our thing without knowing that feedback is one of the biggest tools in our creative development. So at this moment, I can say like, yeah, of course, I advise people to either if you think that it's not everything that you post is going to go viral, to be honest, but I didn't post it for the idea that it's going to become successful. I post it for the idea of reaching the people that I know. I had on Facebook, I had like less than 100 people. Here's my friend, the refugee camp, right? So I just have the idea of sharing it, even if it's like sharing with your friends at home, share it. And then maybe one person is going to share it, and then, oh, we like this. So then the outcome comes from because you created the right product.
I love that. Tell me, what are your plans for the future? What is this year? And then imagine the next 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me right now is I keep building and learning. I want to create an amazing network of people that can support me over the next couple of years. Either to define what I'm working on or to think together and say, hey, well, what is a new thing? Because I feel like I think about new things. I was just thinking the other day on Friday, I was like, maybe use some of my time to support like Global Game Jam or something like that. Yeah, but of course, I have a lot of thinking that I'm doing right now in terms of professionally. Maybe focus on the last 9 years. I've learned a lot, and should I focus on global partnership? Should I get into a different creative industry? But the game development is going to be my first, I'm going to keep doing that. Yeah.
Love that you are constantly working towards this. I don't want to say a higher goal, but it truly is more than just making games. And I really, I look at the man that I met all those years ago, and I see you now, and I see how much you've grown and how incredibly proud I think everybody from the Global Game Jam is of everything that you have overcome, and only wish for you to be prosperous and to be healthy and to continue your resilience. But I want to ask one last question, really, and that is when you look back at that boy in the camp learning on a laptop, what do you think he would be most proud of right now of you?
Yeah, that's a good question. If I look back at Lual, the kid that almost gave up at some point, throwing the laptop down, waking up in the morning to look for mangoes to eat for lunch. Just thinking back at that Lual, being in that space to create things, made me so proud to be where I am today. And I know there's a lot of refugee kids that are going through the same thing. And one of the best things that I am so proud of is be where I am today and continue to tell these stories and be able to continue doing the right thing. But I think for me, I remember having a conversation with my mom, and they asked her one day, what do you want for your children? What do you think? And she was like, there's nothing much, just for them to follow the right path in life. And that's all I'm up to, being able to follow the right path, doing the right thing. And yeah, I'm looking for.
Can I tell you, I am so proud of your work and the things that you are doing to make the industry better, to make games something that we can be extremely proud of. But additionally, everything that you're doing for the community, and I mean the global community, to really put a face to what can be. And really, if I had to say you were the poster child of anything, it would be the poster child of resilience. You truly are a resilient man. Thank you so much for everything that you do. And I truly appreciate you being a part of our podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope to see you again very soon, Lual.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was
You're
fun.
very welcome.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Want to get involved with the GGJ podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Please send your ideas, suggestions, and questions to ggjpod@globalgamejam.org. And tell us who you think we should be talking to next, what stories or issues matter most to you about the future of games, and help us highlight the people and practices that make a sustainable creative life in games possible. Thank you for spending time with us on the GGJ podcast. If this conversation sparked something for you, please share it with someone who might find it useful. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss new stories from makers around the world. You can find more episodes, resources, and information about the Global Game Jam at globalgamejam.org. Catch us on Substack and on YouTube and anywhere else you find podcasts. This has been the GGJ podcast. Thanks for listening and keep making games.